Thank you for joining us. My name is Jonathan Appleton. I'm the Managing Director of ABSL Czech Republic. I'm joined by some other board members from ABSL Czech, who I'll be introducing in a moment. Very nice to see you, and we'll be talking about what's happening in the Czech Republic, in our sector as a whole, and within the centres that each of the board members represent. So let's take a look at who is joining us this afternoon. I'm very pleased to have with us Sergei from Deutsche Telekom, Jan Skotak from Infosys, and Jaromir from AB InBev. They are also members of ABSL board, and I would ask them please to briefly introduce themselves. Starting with you, Sergei.
Thank you, Joe. Hello, everyone. Look forward for this candy discussion at the fireside, so to speak. I've been around in Czech Republic with Deutsche Telekom since 2017, and the situation around COVID-19 has caught us all by sort of surprise, and happy to share the rest here. We are currently a company of 150 people and mostly occupied with accounting from the South Moravian region in Brno.
Jan?
Hello, everyone. Jan Skotak. I represent Infosys in the Czech Republic. We today have about 700 people working in Czech Republic. Have been with the company for the last 15 years. And as Sergei mentioned, I mean, the COVID-19 situation has put us to a completely new, unprecedented challenge. So I'm happy to share some of our, stories and views on the way looking forward.
Finally, Jaromir.
Indeed. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jaromir Staroba, and I'm heading the center of about 700 people in Prague of Anheuser-Busch InBev. We're a company, we produce beer mainly, and also looking forward to a nice and insightful session.
Thank you. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. We have best part of an hour. We are going to combine data and insights here. We have collected over the last couple of months. We got very busy as ABSL responding to this situation. We've run multiple surveys. We have a lot of data from our sector as to how it's responding, the kind of things that we've been doing, and then I'll ask each of the centre heads to also provide some practical examples from their centres. So I hope you will find it inspiring and practical. Before we get in there, let's take a quick look at what the sector looks like in the Czech Republic. This is from our most recent 2020 report. Obviously, this is pre-COVID, but most of these big numbers remain the same. We have over 120,000 employees across 300 plus centres, 3 main centres, Prague, Brno and Ostrava, but we are in 10 plus cities across the country, and regional growth is one of the highest as we move out of some of the larger cities into smaller regional cities. Czech Republic is a very mature, highly experienced location for services. It was one of the first locations in Central Eastern Europe to develop services. So not surprisingly, nearly 75% of the services provided across the sector are in the advanced or partner level stage. There is a lot of predictive data analytics, automation, robotics across the sector. An average of 5% of the employees are actual robots, and there is a large group of robotics experts, developers, engineers, designers that work across the sector, and it's one of the fastest growing areas, and we see a lot of that now post-COVID. One of the interesting things to see around the Czech Republic that makes us a bit different from some of the neighbouring countries is the large number of non-Czechs who work in our sector. Over 40% of the people working across the sector come mostly from Western Europe, some from Central Eastern Europe, and from global locations, especially in the IT sector. We have a lot of people coming from from Asia, from the US, and that helps us to provide the high level of services that we have. But it does, of course, create some challenges around visas, administration, etc., to provide such a pipeline of talent and keep them. We will be going into each of these areas together with the board members because we would like to be sharing with you some results that we've done, 3 major surveys across the sector of our members. We have over 100 of those centres in Czech, our ABSL members. So we're able to get a very clear view of what's been happening in the sector and how our members are responding. So we will talk through these areas together. First of all, what kind of new opportunities have been coming in? It's not just doom and gloom out there. In our sector, not at all. What's interesting in Czech is we are part of a very mixed economy in the Czech Republic. The largest economies have been established as engineering, the auto industry. Our sector has been new to develop alongside those, but has had nothing like the impact that those industries have been suffering over the last couple of months. The auto industry in Czech yesterday reported results of a 30% decrease in productivity across the whole sector, and some worrying forecasts of even further reductions. Well, we haven't seen that at all, and we are seeing business opportunities coming in from elsewhere in the globe, and we'll be discussing that with the board members. So productivity is stable, in some cases up. Recruitment continues. There is a very large IT centre in Prague that is currently still on plans to recruit hundreds of personnel into the centre, and many members are doing it, but of course they've moved digitally, they've moved to other types of operation to get the people that they need. Then we'll take a look at what's happening around education and working outside of the sector on fighting the pandemic. Let me just say at this point, for those listening in, I can't actually see, because I'm going through the presentation, I can't actually see the rest of the board, the questions and chats. But Jan, Jaromir and Sergei have agreed to flag up if there are any questions or chats or things that we can deal with as they come up. So please, your patience while we work through this new technology. I mentioned productivity. We were very surprised and very pleased to see that when more than 90% of the sector, over 100,000 people, went to work remotely, to work from home, from their apartments, from their houses, we saw very little drop in productivity. We saw increases in engagement, and as the time has gone on, that has increased across the sector. Some centres even saw some significant increases in the productivity as their teams came together more often, used digital tools in a way that was better than they were able to do in their offices. So here's a good chance. We've seen this across the sector. Sergei, from Deutsche Telekom perspective, what sort of impact have you seen in the last couple of months on the productivity of your centre in Brno?
Thanks, Joe. Not at all doom and gloom, as you said. Actually, positive surprise. We are in a pretty stable environment, and productivity in a variety of areas of our center has been so far pretty stable. We see that in some areas of the business of our customers, and this is what is driving us actually, we have seen the decrease of demand. This is not the same as the decrease of productivity. It just slightly shifted seasonality. Taking a look at the areas that have been impacted by COVID-19, some construction, some network development, that were a little bit slowed down during March and April, but we see now it's picking up again, and we will see an increase of that particular demand in the second half of the year. Now, this is purely on demand side. On the supply side, we managed to keep stable workforce. We keep managing the customer need in a flexible way, and keep delivering the good value for the customer. So from this perspective, I see ourselves somewhere oscillating around the 67% that you are showing currently on the slides. this is the core of what people probably expect to see in the area of business services. On the other part of the coin, I see that there were areas that were absolutely unfathomable to see the different way of working in the past. Accounting, closing, all this has been delivered in absolutely flawless way, monthly, quarterly. And what we see that the collaboration has actually increased. So if I talk about pure digitalization or appetite for digitalization, it has been significantly increased in comparison to what has been there before. And I think it's a huge chance and huge opportunity to start thinking differently and start delivering the services in a slightly different way. On top of pure KPIs, I do see that we are coming closer to each other. So from psychological perspective, that definitely impacts KPI in a positive way. I see that digitalization services, data analytics services, process mining services that are delivered from here. Here we see an increase of demand because there's no other way to survive, right? For the business, for our customers, but also for ourselves. And if I move a little bit away from pros to clear KPIs in the accounting sector, and this is a lion's part of our business, stable or increased. I mean, take a look on at how many hours our people in accumulated way are saving by not commuting to the office, right? What is the opportunity for them to increase their qualification, to jump on additional digital trainings that just increase the way we work? So all this has a positive impact. And I see a slight lack of performance in the area of creative work, where brainstorming requires people being close to each other, standing in front of a flip chart, jotting down a couple of bullet points. These are the areas where we see some challenges. We are already overcoming it with new technology, but still, people are used to be closer to each other, and I see a huge increase in productivity in digitalization areas. So this in a nutshell.
Thank you, and thank you for giving the perspective across the different areas of your teams and business too. And of course, there are some areas where it's becoming more challenging. You mentioned brainstorming, creativity, the kind of face-to-face activities that over time we start to miss. And I'm sure many of your people and you as leaders are looking forward to returning to the office, and we'll come back to that topic a little later in the discussion. You mentioned there, Sergei, potential areas for new business, whether it's digital or new areas of service. When we asked our members in the survey, we were, again, very pleased to see that more than half of them were not just spotting, but were delivering on new opportunities coming from the pandemic. These were just some examples. We did this survey about a month ago, and since then we've heard of many new areas that are coming in. So as you said, Sergei, digitalization and RPA greatly accelerated, and if a centre was seen to be in a good position to have some influence or strength with this, then it has gained more ground to accelerate and push that forward. Or some have been given a green light when perhaps they were still sitting on an amber light in previous months. It's simply sped up the ability to transform and move ahead digitally. But at the same time, centres have been spotted for adding on additional new processes, additional new areas of expertise. When you look at a global company supporting home working globally, then some of the centres have been involved in providing the IT support, the contacts, the system support to enable that to happen. And then on top of that, some of our larger Czech centres have been heavily involved in the management and the rollout of responses to COVID. So they were seen as being in very strong positions themselves to help their companies to establish guidelines, to monitor how things were going, to move quickly. And certainly one of the advantages of being in Czech, as has happened in Poland and Hungary and many other countries here, the spread of this pandemic has been far better handled, and the numbers have had far less impact on our country and on our business than other parts of the world, and that is releasing some opportunities from the global networks that our centres are picking up on. Jan, I'd like to turn to you for Infosys. Would you have any insights on this process and how the global world of work is providing some opportunities for whether it's Czech centres or other centres to look at seizing the opportunity now?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I think I want to start with saying it's an unprecedented situation that nobody has planned for, and I think while responding to the situation, I think we've learned some things, and I think the big ticket item for me is that we all learned that the work is actually way more movable than we originally thought, and originally mean 3 months back. A lot of us thought that it's only office and work from home was popular, but maybe not enabled. Then China had a problem, and if we had business services centers in China and in Europe, those started traveling from China to Europe because they simply had to, otherwise the business would stop. I mean, nobody really had a BCP plan for the whole country or for the whole continent to go down, let alone to go for the whole planet to go down, if I can put it this way. So we learned that the work is movable. We also learned that we can all move work at home, and while doing so, we can realize that we can actually move it pretty much anywhere. And I think now, if in the past we had some geographical barriers, I right now consider the new normal without any barriers. So any center that can demonstrate value, new thinking. I mean, digital move to electronic way, obviously extremely popular, right, in the non-physical world. So any center that can tap into that will gain. We all support various industries, and some of the industries are hit really, really badly. And they need fresh thinking. They need fresh thinking to sustain their business, to survive in the environment. And us in business services as being transformational, I mean, we have a big role to play. So I really see this as a big opportunities for us in the centers, especially when you start talking about innovation, doing things in a completely different way, saving costs for our parent companies. So I see this as a huge opportunities.
Good to hear it, Jan. And we are seeing it across the sector. I mean, at a time when most people involved in this economy are handing out increasing levels of bad news, we are the ones that have been able to see and seize opportunities and will continue to do so. You said it perfectly, everything is movable. The borders have been removed. We are truly digitally transforming, and there are many opportunities, whether it's within your organizations or across other organizations, to be able to move these things ahead. Of course, it is part of a challenging time, and focus will be on cost reduction, on even further efficiencies, but those that can show innovative ways of doing that stand in a very good position to do it. And we were yesterday, there's a lot of interest in this. We were interviewed by the Euronews channel because they have seen that business services in this part of the world is going against the trend. It is in some ways defining a new trend of moving through this. And there's been very little unemployment. The predictions are positive, both on a local level and from the global advisors that we connect with, that our region will continue to be very strong. But it won't just come. We must go and look for it. We must seize the opportunities within our networks or beyond them, and of course, accelerate our own transformations. And for that, we will continue to need people, which is what we turn to look at next. And our survey showed us that most of our sector continues to recruit, over 90% are still bringing in people. There is no other sector in the tech industry at the moment that is doing that, which has made the recruiting of people considerably easier, because one of the challenges we had over the last couple of years in particular was the sourcing of talent and the poaching of talent between good centres or any centres in our sector. That has been flipped on its head. There is most certainly a new normal there, and centres are able to find the talent that they want, often within the country now, because many people have been released from other sectors and are looking for positions across our centres, which is great. But we have moved to whole new forms of recruiting. No one is being interviewed or met in the offices anymore. We find whole new ways of doing that and of onboarding people into our teams. So I'd like to introduce Jaromir from AB InBev, a large beer logistics center in Prague, to tell us a bit more about what you've been doing in the recruiting and onboarding space in the last few months. Jaromir.
Thank you, Joe. And then indeed, as you mentioned, I think this recruitment, let's say, world moved almost 100% into digital. So we, as a beer business, obviously, we have been quite severely hit by COVID, maybe compared to some of the other centers more. Though we still recruit, we recruit less than we have recruited before because of the volumes, of course, in the pubs, they have been going down quite significantly, but it's been kind of in the off trade. So in the supermarkets, the sales have increased quite significantly, so it balanced out. So we do recruit less though, but I think the number one trend is full digital, right? So we're using tools like Cognisys, for example, to do the testing or the pre-testing of the candidates in advance, which is an automized way how to test. And we're 100% using tools like Zoom. So there is no people being met now in the offices, and the old paradigm of I need to see physically the person, I need to meet physically the person before I allow the person to enter the company is something that I think is dead. And to my belief, it's going to remain that, because we heavily have been and are recruiting from the Western Europe, and the candidates like Prague, right? The candidates like Czech Republic, those candidates after school, they like to come to Czech Republic. And the fact that we're going to be using 100% the digital tools will enable us, I think, to bring more candidates, whilst before the leaders have been more hesitant to recruit people just based on the digital tools. So that's the trend on the recruitment. Where we see a bit less or where we see, decrease is on the recruitment of the interns. So we have been doing before 3 months internships. Obviously now we cannot give the same experience to an intern of getting the same learning through the digital tools, and also the onboarding is a bit delayed due to this. So here we have decreased quite heavily the involvement, and really focus on the candidates that are going to stay with us long term, where even though if we would on the onboarding put a bit more efforts, because of course digital is not exactly the same onboarding, and you don't do the onboarding in exactly the same speed as if it would be physical, then still we take candidates that are going to stay long term with us, and therefore we're happy to invest into those candidates.
Okay, so it's changed in the way that you're doing both recruiting and onboarding, but the process still continues, and you continue to bring more people into your teams and also move people around within your teams to meet different levels of demand in the different areas of your business. Good. I'd like at this point, we're quite a few slides in. Are there any questions and chats out there that you can see? Unfortunately, I can't. So is there questions that you think we could deal with at this stage?
Joe, at the moment, there is no questions. So maybe to kind of talk to the audience to make sure they post some questions if they would be interested in anything.
Good point. Please do let us know that there's somebody out there listening to us. I don't know. Is there any way to see the level of participation on the system? Do we know how many people are listening in?
Yes, there is, and it's 16 people.
16. Wow.
Yes.
Not one of our biggest then. We had 75 this morning, but let's move on, and hopefully of those 16 people, we'll get some questions on the areas that we're presenting or some other challenges for the board members. Okay, I mentioned the impact of the crisis on our sector in Czech. Just to repeat the numbers again, with a sector of 120,000 people, and you put 93% of those to work from home, you have a significant impact on the handling of quarantine. That means that you are putting hundreds of thousands of people and their families in safer, more secure environments. You greatly reduce the impact. So we are very proud of how our sector contributed to the COVID response in Czech, which has seen some of the lowest numbers. We did have very stringent controls. We moved into COVID response very quickly, and our sector did too. And I can tell you this move to work from home happened on the day that quarantine was announced. And as several of the board members have told you, it was completely new for some centres with hundreds and hundreds of people who had never done this, suddenly moved everyone online to work from home, remote systems, and all of them have managed it successfully. Of course, most centres were quite prepared for this. They had it, if not in their plans, it was certainly in their training, it was in their cultures. They had done a day or two of home working, good flexible policies, have established the VPN networks, access to systems, etc. But we are very proud, and we do make a strong business case with the Czech government to show this achievement. And at the moment, we can clearly see that our business service sector is helping to support and stabilize the Czech economy and is not requiring too much of financial support or any other type of support. So most of our members have not asked the Czech government for support, and we'll see how that evolves over the coming months. But that's certainly very different from all other industries that we see here or in the region. One of the things that has greatly increased in focus and attention is the importance of education. Going digital allows access to a global range of digital tools and approaches. It can be argued it gives people some more time that is saved from commuting, or perhaps less efficient usage of meetings or downtime in offices. So we've seen an uptake in the approach to education, in particular in professional development, obviously in digital skills and the use of new tools. I, like all of you, have tried to become much more proficient in the use of Zoom, in the use of new tools like this with Hopin. One of the reasons we've joined today was to take a look at how these systems can work for our events in the future. So this area has developed greatly. Over to you, Jana. Infosys education is hugely important for your people to have the skill set that they need. Have you seen any changes in the last few months around how you or your people have approached their development?
Well, Infosys has one of the largest corporate training facilities in the world. So for us, training has been extremely important for our people. But it has always been a kind of a mix of physical and online or virtual training. I think over the last 2 months, we've all had to move to a complete virtual model, and we've seen a great success. We actually haven't seen much issues moving to that model. As you mentioned, we have the tools, and the tools are actually available for all of us. And as our members see, there's a higher interest from the people to also to upskill themselves. The situation did not upset the industries. It also upset, and people started realizing it, the expectation that we will all have from the people going forward. I think, to put it simply, status quo is gone. So whatever we had, 2-3 months back, is being disrupted and has a question mark around it. So people realize that they need to be learning new things. And a lot of the material is available online. As you mentioned, we've also had to learn a lot of new things, how to run conferences and meetings and workshops virtually. So I'm very pleased with the response. You know, what we do is that we have a model of a two-way model. One is that you give people curriculum, and the other way is that you give them options, what they can pick from the training catalogs. And we've seen a considerable increase in the adoption of the voluntary training, if I can put it this way. And I think the data from the survey very clearly indicated that this is the trend across the industry. And I personally believe that this will only continue as the situation develops.
Yes, and I think it's we should add that the ABSL board has recognized this as well, that education really comes to the forefront during these times, as it did back in 2007, 2008. It helps to differentiate our sector. It helps to give people some security and a recognition of their professional development when we continue to invest in their education. And let's face it, digital forms of education are often more efficient and cost effective. We moved our own Fusion leadership program, which we run with a group of senior leaders from across our sector. We moved that to a digital format earlier in this year, and it's actually more productive, more collaborative, and has better engagement from the leaders than we were doing and constantly arranging face-to-face meetings, etc. So education can actually be improved in these times. And we're also seeing a greater interest in qualifications, such as we use the Hackett diploma or Hackett certificates in GBS. People are asking us for these. They're completing them and they're giving us great feedback on how this helps to upskill them and show them more opportunities they can focus on with their businesses going forward. So education is key, but it's also been a great opportunity. Most of the centres were already involved in CSR, in charitable type activities. But there has been a huge uptake in how centres have not only looked after their own people, but taken responsibility for going out and helping society, for providing materials many of their companies actually produce the materials that we need, whether it's face masks or disinfectants, respirators. A huge uptake in the levels of financial support for donations and contributions to charities, much more interest in employees volunteering and taking part. We as ABSL are planning some charitable events in the coming months to cross-sector to bring people together in a digital way, but also raise some funds to support the continuing fight against COVID. And Jaromir, you had some interesting posts we saw on LinkedIn recently where your InBev people were involved with supporting some elderly people in the local community. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
That's completely correct. I think if I would start in general, our company's pledge is to bring people together for a better world. So we have been doing these activities already before because as a beer producer, as a company, FMCG company with heavy production facilities, we feel big time kind of having to bring back to the society or having to bring back to the environment what we take, right? So we have a lot of different even before we have a lot of different programs linked to our beers, one being for Corona, for example, to clean the beaches, being for Budweiser, for 100% renewable energy usage in producing the beer. But we also started to do quite a lot of activities locally. So to your point, Joe, it's not also only the COVID that moved us to that. We have so-called Better World ambassadors, which are our associates that are helping in different areas in different ways already for years there, and it's mainly on a voluntary basis, people that have affinity to this better world agenda. But what we have done lately indeed is a connection to an elderly home which is located 1-2 kilometers away from our center in Prague for Chodov, which even has been in the news as one of the elderly home severely hit by COVID. We have offered different activities and different cooperation, like shopping for the elderly people. And as well as we have, of course, because we're a beer company, we have donated beer there to make the let's say day nicer for the people, and we have pledged as well for a long-term relationship and long-term kind of cooperation with this elderly home, that in the future, for sure, once it's going to be allowed, also the physical contact, our people and our associates can be volunteering towards the seniors as well, to take them out, for example, into the parks and so on.
What a very nice move, and I'm sure greatly appreciated, because they are one of the most at-risk populations, and your people are considerably younger. And you as a company took some risk, and your people did, but I'm sure you managed it very carefully. But a great move to step in and support these centres at a time when they really need it. And a good idea to serve them beer also. I mean, that helps us all to get by these times.
For the moment, it was 100% contactless, right? Because we don't want,
yes.
Of course, health of our employees is a priority. So for the moment, all of the support we have done was contactless. But in the future, of course, hopefully, once we get out of this stage, is also going to be including the physical contact.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So that's an area that we continue to build on, and we have some exciting developments over the summertime, where we'll be running various digital sporting events to help to give our members something to do and to raise some great donations and contributions to help with the fight for this this disease. I mentioned earlier that we have a very significant foreigner and expat population. They have been effectively stranded. The borders were closed in the early March. They are still severely limited in their ability to travel. Many of them were locked out of their offices and their communities and their ability to use their expat networks. They couldn't go to the pubs. They couldn't even for a long time sit outside of the pubs. It was not their country. They were separated from their country. I speak with some experience, because although I've been in this country for 27 years and I'm a Czech citizen here by now, but for a very large part of our centre population, this has been quite a difficult and challenging time. And we, of course, want to support them. We, of course, want to ensure that they continue to stay. It's great that they've been gainfully employed in our centres and that productivity has stayed up, but they require a lot more than that. So we've seen multiple activities engaged in supporting all staff, not just foreigners and expats. Engagement type activities. I'd like to turn now to Sergei at Deutsche Telekom, because I think you've been very proactive in this area. Sergei, would you like to share some examples of the kind of things that you've done with your teams in the last months to keep everybody engaged?
Yeah, gladly. Joe, you mentioned already, not only foreigners, it's about the engagement with the whole population. What we see, and we were able to experiment with different formats, different type of activities that have been moved to digital way. Sometimes we see that indeed foreigners utilize the offers more often than someone who has deeper roots in Czech Republic, who is not so lonely, has a family here. But let me share a couple of things, and I try to divide it into areas, following this the proverb of sound mind in a sound body. So on a sound mind, we have implemented just within few days after this lockdown has been announced. We've implemented the hotline that would allow employees to call in in English language and be served in the psychological area. This is the 24/7 hotline, and then we have professional psychologists sitting on the other side. So we are going to get the figures and satisfaction of this by end of month. I'm very curious how it was utilized in the last 2.5 months. Then also on the sound mind, we have been offering a variety of quote unquote feel good trainings. I mean, reaching from meditation over to mindfulness, just to reduce the stress level and get into yourself, especially in a situation where you cannot get out, or it's not recommended to get out, like it was here in Czech Republic. And all this has been done online with a good response rate. And again, the flexibility is everything. We learn as we go, and if we see something works, we make and do more of it. If we see something does not work, we stop it. And this flexibility is small company, maybe a bit of luxury to deliver the kind of trainings in this way. This is on a sound mind. On a sound body, we have been doing a lot even prior COVID-19 times, but also this absolutely with the technology. I mean, technology that we ourselves are selling. It's also being a blessing being a telco company, sitting on those networks. I mean, we do have good technological progress here, and we were able to shift the things like digital daily planking, yoga, stretching classes. So everything that is connected with the sporting activities to digital way. And unsurprisingly, if we were able to host up to 10, 11 people in the office environment, here we were able to almost double the participation rate because of virtual environment. So from this perspective, I see good progress and on both sound mind and sound body. And just to keep also a little bit of mood going, we have been also implementing and experimenting with a hugely successful things, as we learned afterwards in the inside. Things like virtual quizzes with more than 100 people participating from our company. We have been playing around with virtual sessions. We call it virtual coffee drinking events. I mean, communication is extremely important in this kind of times. Yes, and we were able to bring people even closer together with different type of backgrounds. As Joe, we see now, we know exactly that you read a lot, right, with this bookshelf. So this is something what brings us all closer. And from this perspective, I'm sure that after the whole situation is over, we will be a little bit more connected with each other than before. Of course, everything is just a theory. Just today we have finished so-called pulse survey, where we are measuring the satisfaction of employees with variety of areas, from leadership management strategy over to working conditions. And specifically this time, we were also asking 3 questions with regard to the response to COVID-19, how company reacted, whether people effectiveness has been impacted. In 2 weeks' time, we will see these results, and I'm very happy to share it maybe on a broader scale, because this actually will be the litmus test of whether we managed it well or not.
Thank you, Sergei. Very interesting perspectives there. Yeah, and you mentioned a survey of employees as a litmus test across your organization. We're also thinking the same way too. We run an annual survey. ABSL does this in all of the countries where we operate. It provides the basis for our annual report and a huge amount of benchmarking and feedback for the sector. And this year, we are thinking to, for the first time, include some very detailed surveying of employees, not just the employers themselves, but we want to take part in some temperature testing across the sector to see how people are feeling, how they have responded. We'll be discussing it with board members as to how to do it, ensure confidentiality, etc. But with everything that we've been through, you really do need to keep monitoring for how people are feeling and how they continue to feel, because this is not going away for some time, and it would help us to keep managing it going forward. So thank you. Some very interesting insights into the many things that you do in Deutsche Telekom to support.
Joe, just sorry to interrupt. Just one second. If you remember last week, we were looking into some of the surveys done by Collier and on engagement, and I was surprised to see that this was an interesting survey of what people miss most, and one of the key areas where random encounters, coffee drinking, spontaneous lunches. I mean, all this what makes actually social interaction and creativity going on. We have been experimenting with a variety of things that can keep it up, but inevitable. We cannot just pass by and ask someone something if we see. We need to deliberately take a phone in our hands and call or write an email. And this is just a different way of engagement that we all need to learn a little bit.
Yes, yes. And I'm sure it's paid off. You've said many times, Sergei, that the engagement in your centre has continued and in many ways has actually increased over these challenging times, and that's great to hear. But
Joe, there are a few questions.
Really great.
Indeed.
Should we have one other topic to consider, or do you want to raise them now? I would just deal with.
Let's finish maybe with the topic.
Let's just take a look at, because it all leads towards the big question now. With we've all been digital, we've all been remote, but we're all starting to plan and move back into our centres. How is that working out? I can tell you that there is no Czech centre that we surveyed that plans to go back to business as usual. In other words, to move all of their people back to their previous desks or situation. That is just a no-go. Probably illegal anyway, based on social distancing measures of 2 meters plus. So everyone has to redesign the centre. But many centres are looking to deploy new strategies. Most are going for a voluntary return to work. In other words, come if you want to. Everything is completely safe, making absolutely sure that they're according to the continually strict government guidelines. And we'll talk a bit with the board members now as to what they're doing. But it's live and it's happening. We as ABSL have moved back into some ongoing use of our office space, and it's great. It allows us to do some things that we weren't able to do as well digitally. And just as you said, Sergei, it allows the random interactions to start again. So over to you, board members. Are you back in the offices yet? I can't see you here, so I don't know what your backgrounds are. If not, when, and maybe a few words on how. What are your plans?
So, okay, let me start. I'm in the office. So this,
must be nice, Jan. That's a new office. Yeah, the first time you've been in.
I've been here a few times, but yeah, for most of the people, it's new. The whole situation that we have, we also, collided with our move to a new office in Czech Republic. So we now have a bigger office, a new office. So it's open. People are returning back to the office. We're taking it slow. We don't want to really rush it. There's still a lot of unknowns about the whole situation. So we have a wave approach over the coming weeks, how to get the number of people in the office, and the number means the number that the rules, the social distancing rules and the other restrictions imposed by the Czech government will allow us to have. But right now we're planning for about 6 weeks. We started with about 5% of the people in the office. We are slowly increasing it to about 15%. And right now with the current restrictions that we have, it seems that we'll have a 50-50 split between work in the office and work from the office until the rules are let and open up. But so far it's going well. I mean, we talk about it. Some people really enjoy working from home, but there are also some people who really miss the social interaction and the contact with the people, and they miss the office. So far, good progress.
Which of those are you, Jan? Are you happy to be back in the office again?
Yeah, definitely. I've been traveling in the past, so I ended up in the Czech Republic during the quarantine time. So I missed the office for almost 1.5 months.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Jaromir, are you looking to open up again?
We are indeed, but we haven't opened up yet. So unlike Jan, but we are going to open up somewhere beginning of June. And of course, we're also going to have, it's not going to be the same as before. We're going to have a staged return back to the office with first 30% of people, then 50%, 70% of people. And then, of course, we're considering what is the end, right? Whether it's going to end at 100% or not. And then most likely not. So we're like the other companies as well, thinking on sort of form of long-term partially home office and partially working from the office. Of course, all of the measures, I think all of the companies have taken the measures like sanitization of the offices and cleaning and all that has happened. From our side as well, I would like to mention two things linked to technology, because we also embrace use of technology in the center. One is a kind of digital measurement of temperatures in an automated way. So at the entrance, there will be kind of a thermometer without anybody having to scan anything or look at any of the screens, which will check the temperature and put green or red, which can be also connected kind of to the door opening or not opening for the persons. Of course, people that will not feel well or that will not want to come to the office, because it's also going to be a voluntary basis. In the beginning, they will not be working in the office, putting in risk anybody else. And for the social distancing, we're finalizing now an app which we want to launch, where people will be able to reserve their places in the office. So we will, of course, then only allow certain places where people can sit to ensure the 2-meter distancing. And this app will also help us tracking the people who are in the office.
Okay, again, using digital technology to provide safety and improve the return to office situation as well. Sergei, anything to add on that? Any other plans that you have?
Yes, since the company is a little bit smaller than Jan's and Jaromir's, in Brno for the time being, we have, well, I'm counting on, one of my colleagues coined the phrase, best process is no process. So from the perspective of self-organization, we did create some rules, and we expect that our colleagues are following it, and it works pretty nicely. So we refrain from having an app, insanely clean office, all this temperature measurement. I mean, this is normal. But how people are sitting, we just created the rules, and we hope for self-organization, which I expect will work because we're all mature people. But going forward, and this is an interesting now, the home office and remote work is something that opening up huge opportunities in the future. And I'm not only looking at adding more productivity in areas where we see it's working better or in the same way. I mean, if people are not sitting in the office over 30% of the time, I do expect to raise a topic of desk sharing, of starting to subleasing of pieces of the office. But if I take a look also at our talent acquisition processes, I mean, if it is possible to deliver great work from home, then we are not bound by Brno, South Moravian region. We are not bound by Czech Republic region. We can hire basically Europe-wide, if not even worldwide, with the skills that we need. So all these type of questions that has not, as I said, they were unfathomable in the past. Right now we are taking a look at and trying to make the sense out of it, especially with the technology. But to answer the question that you posed, currently we are not allowing more than 20% of the people in the office, and I want to have it until end of June.
Sure.
We will link it a little bit according to government recommendations. But many people are speaking, and professionals are speaking about wave 2. So instead of going back to normal, old normal, and coming back in lockdown, I would rather keep the stability. And I'm looking towards November, December, how this develops, and then coming properly back.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Sergei. Thanks for your insights. Thanks all. We have around 7 minutes left. Could you pick the questions that you can see, especially if you feel like answering it. Unfortunately, I can't see them. So what's out there, Jaromir? Anything you want to try and answer?
Yes, I think both questions are linked to kind of recruitment and staffing. So I can go through them, I can answer, and then my colleagues can answer. So the first one is from Piotr, and it's linked to doing a face-to-face recruitment, whether we're doing it fully, including senior roles. And the second question is from Simona, and it's about after COVID time, if we believe it's going to be more difficult to attract the foreigners to come and work in Czech Republic. So for me, the first one, answering even for the senior roles, we prefer to have internal candidates. So normally we prefer to grow our people, so we're not hiring too many senior roles into the organization. But if we were, even before, we have been also hiring through digital channels because a lot of the people are foreigners. They didn't have a chance to come to Czech Republic. So even for the senior roles, I would not restrict myself on having to meet the person before hiring. And then the second question of Simona on the after COVID, whether we believe there will be more difficult to attract foreigners. Can be, of course, we hope it's not gonna be. But to be honest, as a company, because we're even having more foreigners than the overall ABSL industry. So Joe talked about over 40%. We have over 60% foreigners in our organization because we have heavy language-dependent activities in our center. And I start to think on kind of maybe moving strategically a bit more towards trying to hire more locally, and or it's not about Czech people, it's about people with more local affinity, because I see a bit the mood of the people that are now stuck in the Czech Republic with their families, some of them getting ill and so on. I see a bit hitting this engagement of the foreigners. So strategically, I think we're going to think about seeing how we can get more people that would have more kind of connection to Czech Republic, not necessarily, of course, being Czech people, because we would not be discriminating in any sort of way. So passing on maybe there to Jan to answer those two questions.
Okay. So the first one of face-to-face recruitment meetings, as everybody, we moved completely to virtual online, and we don't plan to change it in the near future. So right now, again, as Jaromir, we don't really hire too many senior roles. We prefer to grow people internally, but if we would do that. We would do that online. The only non-online piece of the recruitment is the first day of onboarding, that we actually have people coming to the office for 1 day for the paperwork, and then the training is done virtually. In terms of the foreigners, I think people will still want to come to Czech Republic because Czech Republic is just a great country for expats to find work and to live in. I think we'll have to see, how the restrictions on the borders and quarantine, if they are still there, if potentially there might be some wave 2 of COVID-19. So I think right now it's more an unknown than me seeing it more difficult in the midterm and long-term future. We'll have to see that and wait.
I must say on that second question, just to finish, I mean, from what I'm seeing, first of all, this region, not just Czech, but all of the countries around here handled this situation extremely well. So they have a very strong reputation. The New York Times, the Washington Post, the Times in the UK have all written pieces around why CEE has handled COVID better than other countries have been able to. So it's established, or built a reputation for being safer to come to. If you combine that with our sector's resilience and ability to move through this and then grow, then I think we stand to have increasing numbers of people coming here. My Facebook is full of my friends and contacts who are asking how and when they can move over here. And I think that could easily continue. So reasonably confident for the future. Thank you so much to all of the panel for joining me on this. Jan, Sergei, and Jaromir, thank you for your insights. And big thanks to Tom Bernhard, and a great day's conference. We've learned a lot from this as well, and looking at the new Hopin platform, learned a lot from the other sessions too. So big thanks to all the panel. Thank you, and maybe you could say thanks and sign off.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you
for
for questions.
listening.
Goodbye.